Okay, now we're going to apply what we did yesterday, solving some equations. So there are two solutions we have to find because the unknown variable is to the second power. Just like I kind of went over with you before. Now, you have x to the second. You also have the x that isn't to the second, so we have to make sure it's equal to 0 so we can factor, but we have to do a little game change here today. You have the equals 0, so that's good. All the equations will be equal to 0 today, so you're ready to roll. Now you're going to put an implied 1 in front of your x to the second, just in parentheses. You're going to underline those, and first you're going to start with your GCF box. We run into a little problem. I know the multiplication chart doesn't run to 28, but when you look up 1, 11, 28, if now all three would have to be in the same row now, 1, 11, 28. Well, the problem is when 1 is one of the numbers, the only row that would ever appear in is 1. And dividing by 1 is stupid, okay? And you wouldn't do x either because we have x here, we have it here, but we don't have it here. Okay, so you can't do it. X won't be in the greatest common factor because they don't all share an x. Notice we have a positive in front, so we negative. If all I can do is call it 1, we don't do that. Instead, what I'm going to do is set up that table yesterday, but you got to be organized with your work. You're going to set up big long box and you're going to split it into parts. This is for the table. This is for the parentheses. So that was x to the second. So as we said yesterday, the only way that happens is if we're taking x times x. Now do what you did yesterday to fill out the rest. You take the a times ABC, you take the a times c, and that's 1 times 28 is 28 positive. And put what you're adding to. You're adding to get negative 11. Now I got a positive here. So we'll start off with negative, negative. They have to be the same sign. And I start dividing. I take 28 divided by 1. Now, it's not that hard on here. You just put the number you divided by and the answer you got. 128. Now I add those, and if it's not 11 of any kind, I move on. Nope. Negative, negative. After 1 comes 2. Remember, I'm taking 28 divided by these numbers I put here. Okay. So 28 divided by 2. I got 14. So put 2 on one side, 14 on the other. Add those two. Negative 2 plus negative 14. Nope, it's not any kind of 11. Okay, next up, I will be taking, after 2 comes 3. I got a decimal, so I skip that. Now I go to 4. 28 divided by 4. Put the 4 on one side, the 7 on the other. Again, negative, negative. Now add those. Negative 4 plus negative 7 is negative 11. And that's exactly what we want. It's the right number. It's the right sign. Beautiful. So I put minus 4, minus 7. Now here's how you get your answers. 0 is not going to be one of the answers today because these are your two factors now. F1, F2. So x minus 4 could equal 0. X minus 7 could equal 0. Put 1s in front if you want. Plus 4, plus 4. 1 times x equals 4. You can divide by 1 if you want, but it's still 4. Plus 7, 1 dot x, 0 plus 7 is 7. And then I divide by 1, but it's still 7. Okay, and there's the two solutions. Okay, next one, we have x to the second power minus 2x minus 35 equals 0. So I have two answers. We have x to the second along with the x not to second, so we have to factor. But now more is added to the factoring. So I put the implied 1, and I have 3 terms. So whenever I have three terms I have to factor, I set up the GCF box, and then I make that big long box split in half with the T-chart. Once again, 1, 2, and 35 would just share a common factor of 1. There's no row you would find all three of those numbers other than the first row, hence 1's a GCF. Okay, you're not going to put X because that 35 doesn't have X. You're also not going to put a negative because that 1 in the front is positive. So if the GCF's just 1, out of here. So A, B, C. Okay. Make your two parentheses first because you're factoring. Okay. Okay, so I've got x to the second power. Remember, that 1 wasn't there to begin with. Okay, x to the second power is x and x. The 1's just something I put there for later purposes. Okay, 1 times negative 35 is negative 35. Okay, so it is a negative. So if I'm looking for two factors that multiply to a negative, I have to have a positive times a negative. That's the only way to get a negative. We want the factors to add to get negative 2. Well, you know you got 1 and 35. You know you got 1 in the number. Add those. That's not going to be negative 2. Okay? It's not 2 of any kind. As long as you get some kind of 2, you don't have to go. Okay? Now, remember, I'm taking 35 divided by these numbers I put here. After 1 comes 2. Decimal, you skip it. After 2 comes 3. Decimal, skip it. After 3 comes 4. Decimal, skip it. After 4 comes 5. Okay, so I didn't get a decimal. I put the number I divided by on one side and put the number I got on the other. So plus 5 minus 7. Add those, see if it's negative 2. 5 plus negative 7. Bingo. So you put plus 5 minus 7. Now, your factors are now here. You've rewritten this in the two factors that would multiply to that 3 term. So you have F1, F2. So x plus 5 could equal 0. X minus 7 could equal 0. So 1, 1. So minus 5, minus 5. 0 minus 5 is negative 5. Then I divide by 1. Negative 5 divided by 1 is negative 5. Then here, plus 7, 0 plus 7, 7. Divide by 1, you're still at 7. Negative 5 and 7. Okay, my next problem, we have x to the second power plus 6x minus 40 equals 0. So there would be two solutions here. And you have x second. You've also got x that isn't to the second, so that means we have to equal 0 and factor. Okay, so put an implied 1, and I start with my GCF. But with the GCF, you're not just looking at the 6 and 40. It's going to be 1, 6, and 40, which means the GCF's 1. No x because 40 at the end doesn't have x. No negative because the leading number's not negative. Okay, so we make our parentheses down there. That was x to the second, so we know that that's x, x. Now, I don't know the rest of it, so I could take 1 times negative 40. That's negative 40. So that's a positive times a negative. We are trying to add the factors to come up to positive 6. Got to be plus 6. Well, 1 in that number there is always the starting point. Because 40 divided by 1 is 40. I put 1 on one side, 40 on the other. If I add those, that's not anywhere as close. Okay, after 1 comes 2. Remember, you're dividing 40 by the numbers I'm putting here. So I put 40 divided by 2. 20. Okay, so plus 2 minus 20. Nope, that's not 6. Okay. After 2 comes 3. So I go 40 divided by 3. That's a decimal. After 3 comes 4. 40 divided by 4. Okay, that wasn't a decimal, so we go 4, 10. Okay, 4 on one side, 10 on the other. Plus 4 minus 10. Now I'm going to add these. 4 plus negative 10. That's negative 6. So I got the right number at least, but the wrong sign. That's okay, okay? As long as it's the right number, but what I have to do to get the right sign is simply switch them, plus, negative. So negative 4 plus 10 is, now I'm at 6. Okay? So minus 4 plus 10. So F1, F2, and I said each one equals 0. X minus 4 equals 0. X plus 10 equals 0. So I plus 4, plus 4. 0 plus 4 is 4. Divide by 1 if you must. That's 4. Minus 10. 0 minus 10 is negative 10. Divide by 1 if you want to, and that's negative 10. Okay, next one, 2 answers. We have x to the second. We've also got x. So we have to equal it to 0 so we can factor. Okay, so the GCF. Again, I don't even need a multiplication chart. If one of the 3 numbers is a 1, okay, the GCF's 1. You're not going to do x because 55 don't have it, or a negative. So that was x to the second. So that goes back to x times x. Again, what you're doing with this is trying to come up with the 2 parentheses that would multiply out to this, okay? You don't want to just guess and check. That's going to take forever. Okay, so I take 1 times positive 55. That's positive 55, so the signs will start off with double negative because a negative times a negative is a positive. And you're adding to get to positive 16. Well, if I divide 55 by 1, it's 55. But that does not add up to positive 16. Negative, negative. Now, imagine me putting a 2 there. 55 divided by 2 would be a decimal. Imagine me putting a 3 there. 55 divided by 3 would be a decimal. Imagine me putting a 4 there. 55 divided by 4 is a decimal. 5. Okay, I got 5 and 11, so I put the 5 on one side, the 11 on the other. Now I add them. Negative 5 plus negative 11. Okay, right number, but the wrong sign. Okay? Well, I can stop dividing. I just need to fix the signs. I just change them both to the opposite. So plus 5, because a positive times a positive is also a positive 2. So F1, F2. So x plus 5 equals 0. X plus 11 equals 0. So I'm minus 5. 0 minus 5 is negative 5. You can divide that by 1, it's still going to be negative 5. Really dividing by 1 is stupid, so I'm going to quit doing it. 0 minus 11 is negative 11. So those are our 2 answers. By the way, yep. Okay, next one, x second plus 6x plus 8 equals 0. You got 2 answers. Again, you're always going to have x to the second and that x in there that isn't to the second, so it's got to be equal to 0 so you can factor. This is equal to 0, so I put the implied 1. Now I see three numbers instead of the 2 I saw earlier in the week. Okay, greatest common factor 1, 6, and 8 are just in the first row. You can't do x because there's that 8 without an x. And negative in front, nope. Okay, so I take positive 1 times positive 8. That's positive 8, so negative, negative. And what we are trying to do is add, so we get to positive 6. Well, if I divide by 1, I get 8, but that's negative 9 when you add, so not close. If I put a 2, That'd be 4. Okay. Again, keep the signs the same. Keep the signs the same. If you add those, you get -6. But I need +6, which means all I have to do then is flip the signs, both of them. Again, so 2 parentheses. Remember, this was a 1. Now it's x seconds, so it's just x times x. Because I didn't that started off as x a second. The only things that multiply to x a second is x times x, and then the other two have to multiply to +8, plus 2 plus 4, but they also have to add to +6. So f1, f2. So x plus 2 could equal 0. X plus 4 can equal 0. So just -2. 0 minus 2 is -2. You don't have to divide by 1. It's still -2. If it's another number, you have to. 0 minus 4 is -4. -2, -4. Okay, next one. X to the second minus 9x plus 8 equals 0. We have 2 answers. We have x to the second, and we have x. Okay. So we got to get it equal to 0. 0's there. So I put the implied 1 in front. That's 3 terms. Okay. So greatest common factor. Then I go straight to my box. Okay. So the greatest common factor is uno again. Can't do x. You also don't do a negative. You can't do x because that last number doesn't contain x. So I'm not going to be bothering with that. Because dividing by 1 doesn't help me. So 1 times +8 is +8. Okay? So negative, negative. We're trying to add to get to -9. Now, if I divide 8 by 1, I get 8. Now, add those. Okay? You don't... -1 plus -8 is -9. So I found it. It's the right number, the right sign. I can stop there. That's the beauty of it. Okay? So now think. This is x to the second, okay? That's x times x, and then -1 minus 8. So f1, f2. So x minus 1 equals 0, x minus 8 equals 0. So I plus 1, I get 1. Plus 8, I get 8. So 1, 8. Okay, I'm going to cross out these two. You guys can go work. You got 4 to do.